Well, welcome back to my studio. This is a new commission that I'm working on, and I showed you a picture of the full painting in the first of the video. Now I'm going to be working on the background landscape. I have already painted the sky, and the upper portion of the sky is cobalt blue plus white. As I move down, it gets a little bit lighter and a little more, the color is a little more intense. This is phthalo blue plus white, and then just along the horizon I've added just a touch more white and a tiny bit of cadmium orange into that phthalo blue plus white, so that gets a little bit lighter as the sky gets down toward the horizon. If on a real bright sunny day, if you'll walk outside and look directly overhead, you'll notice that the sky is a darker blue and it gets greener as it gets down toward the horizon. Also, I have a weather vane here with a flying pig, and so he's already been done in. And now I'm ready to do my hills back here. But you can see that the perspective is a little bit off because my camera is at an angle to the canvas. That's the only way I can paint and show you what I'm doing. If the camera was straight on to the canvas, I'd be in front of the camera and you couldn't see what I was doing. So anyway, let's get to painting. All right, first I'm going to work on the most distant mountains. And in painting, when we're doing more representational painting, even if it's impressionistic, we're working on a two-dimensional surface, a flat surface, and we want to make it appear 3 dimensions. We want our landscape to feel like it's going back. So one of those tricks that we use is cool colors go back, warm colors come forward. And our cool colors are our blues and our blue-greens. So these mountains back here, the furthest mountains are, this is the hill country in Texas. So I guess we call them hills. I use blues for that. This is ultramarine blue plus a tiny bit of my mud. And the mud is 2 parts of ultramarine blue and 1 part of alizarin crimson. And so I've then mixed white into that to make a light blue. So the hills go back. There's going to be a tree right here. So I kind of bring the hill in behind that. I'll paint the tree over it. Now that hill is the furthest in the distance. So another way to make it go back is to soften the edge. Because soft edges go back, hard edges come forward. So I can just, my paint is wet, my paint in the sky is wet. So taking a clean brush, I just kind of pull over that transition between the sky and the hills back there. I'm going to make this a little bit, dip down a little bit more, so I have saved my sky color. This is my lightest color, and I just make that a little bit softer and pull from the sky into the mountain. And now I keep wiping my brush out because I want this transition in the sky. I don't want that to be a real line there. This just makes that, gets a little dip there, and that softens that edge. As we come forward, this hill then is gets a little warmer. It has some oranges. I'm using a mixture of phthalo blue plus cadmium orange plus white. And this is rocks. This is in Dripping Springs, which is around Austin, Texas. And this is just, there's some beautiful bluffs up in there. There's cedar trees and stuff on the tops of those bluffs. But that gives us that. This is a little bit warmer. And I'm letting these, I'm not going to soften those lines so that comes forward of that blue behind it. And the sun is hitting these bluffs. The sun is coming in, no, actually the sun's coming in from the left. So this side of the bluff is going to be a little bit darker, which that is not. But these are mixes of my mud plus cadmium orange. And I even bring some of my blues into that. The blue again helps that to go back. Now I'll bring the pole of the weather vane down into that wet paint, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I want to get my bluffs in here. This is called a bright brush. It's got a square end, and that's why they call it a bright. There's also a flat that has a square end, but the bristles are a lot longer, and I find that very awkward to use. I really like these bright brushes, and so this is what I use. Now this part of the Bluffs is getting a little bit of sunlight, so it's a little bit brighter and lighter in there. But you can see how I use that corner of the brush and the flat edge of the brush to just make the shapes of those rocks. A little bit more of those bluff colors in there. And that actually is going to reflect down into that water back there. We'll work on that a little bit. Now, as we come forward, the brush strokes a little bit hard. There we go. Now we've got this tree here that's breaking up. And these are a little bit darker mixtures of my phthalo blue plus cadmium orange. And I can just use that flat edge of the brush to make my tree. The sun's coming in from the left, so the left side of the tree is going to get a little more light. That's too much light. But this side's going to be a little bit lighter. And then I get some darks in here. And this is going to go all the way back. Make this a little bit darker here. Top of the tree will be catching that light. I have my thinner, my paint thinner. I don't know how well you can see this, but my paint thinner's in a water jug that I cut down, and I just put my paint thinner in that. And I use odorless paint thinner. It's terpenoid odorless paint thinner, because my studio is in my easel is set up in my living room, and so I don't want that turpentine smell in my living room. So then I've got some bluffs here, some rocks here, and these are actually, I need to make that a little bit lighter. And that sunlight's hitting these. My brush picked up some of that green, and I should have wiped it out. To keep your brush, to have nice clean color on your canvas, you need to have a clean brush. Now we're going to bring some of this darker color back in here, because that will accentuate the light on this bluff here. And by doing that, those overlapping elements also help to give the impression of distance, of depth in the painting. That blue's a little too bright. So this comes in down behind the horses. And then my tree, actually I want to come down in here. I've saved my sky color because these, as you look at trees, they get thin at the top and you see the sky through. You see little sky holes through. So I can just take a smaller, bright brush, again it's got that square end, and just kind of feather those edges. I can just lightly hold my brush and just pull that that paint into from the sky down. You don't want to pull from the tree out. You want to pull from the sky down. And it just softens those edges. Now this is a little bit more phthalo blue added into that mixture, and that just gives me some nice darks in here. Trees are not all the same shade. There's lots of variation within them. Just drop my tissue into my thinner. That's not going to do it. But again, I just use these, that edge of the brush to make my bluffs, and they get back into shadow in here. It gets a little bit darker. It's probably too dark, but I can come back. It's just a matter of coming back and forth. And you can even see how I can use that big brush to work around my sketch of the horses. I sketched this in a previous session with mixes of the mud plus liquid, and I just made a really thin wash to do my sketch. But that sketch is dry now, so if I happen to just, like there, I pull over the horse. If I want to erase that, I just take a clean brush, swish it out in thinner, and then I can take a clean brush and just lift off that color off of my sketch. And I still have my sketch there. So that makes it very, very simple. So I'm going to use this little bit smaller brush to work around my horse. Again, that light's hitting the bluff back there. And we'll do a little bit of a... Now I'm going to take a little ultramarine blue plus mud plus white. It's going to be darker, a little bit darker than my sky. I'm going to start bringing that water down. Right in here. Bring my water and now these bluffs back here reflect down into that water. So I'm just going to pull some of that color down into the water, and that gives the feelings of reflection. And along the edge of that water, along that transition point, just do a little bit of, that's probably not bright enough. And I can just brace on the dry part of the canvas. The water collects along the edge. Gets a little foam and just all the little doodads. And so that gives us the edge of that water. Now I bring some of that little brighter mix in here. It's lighter. And then here we get a little bit of this is coming down. And then we'll come back with some of our blue and just make the cross strokes. Now I went over my bluff there, so it's very easy then to come back and make that. I'm going to show more of this in my next video, so please come watch part 2. But this kind of shows you how I get those bluffs in and start getting the water in. So thank you so much for watching my YouTube videos. Visit my blog. The link is in the description below. And you just have a wonderful, wonderful day and happy painting.